Yeah, so today we'll be discussing about how you can integrate an intelligent chat experience, an AI-powered chat experience in your existing website, powered by the content from Sitecore and data from any of the external systems as well. I'm Subbu. I'm working as a Senior Director of Technology at Altido, working from Halifax in Canada. I'm two-time Sitecore Technology MVP. I love building modules for Sitecore. I've created the Teams app for Sitecore and also the Chrome extensions. And thanks for the opportunity to host those sessions. Like I presented those things, I think, a couple of years back. Thanks for taking the time to join those sessions as well. And you can look at my modules in the GitHub. And I've also included one of the modules that I'm going to present today as well in the GitHub as well. Please take a look and share your feedback. So today we'll be discussing about why AI-driven chatbots are necessary, and then we will move on to what is OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, how it's different from OpenAI, and what is Azure AI Studio, and also how you could build a chat experience for your existing website. And I'll cover 3 approaches today, and the design for those, and then we'll cover the demo for those as well. So starting with why AI-driven chatbots are necessary. So the AI-driven chatbots are redefining the search experience across the world right now. So what's happening is, so previously, if you want to search anything, like you will just go to the google.com or bing.com, and then you will put in your keywords, right? So previously it was a keyword search. Like now people are moving towards the conversational search. Like if they have any specific questions, like now they just go ask the question itself. So then the Google or Bing will give the answer itself, right? Like a kind of like a conversational thing. So how it helps is like you don't have to like go through all the articles that is provided by the Bing or Google, right? Like so you get 10 results or 20 results. Like you don't have to like go through all of them, or at least like 2, 3 to get the understanding, right? So you can basically ask the question, and Bing.com will go through all of those 10 articles, and then it has an inbuilt natural language processing with which it understands your question, and then it would search those documents like based on those keywords, as well as the vector embeddings that would get converted from your query. And it would basically search all of those documents and then give the answer specifically for you. Like, for instance, like if you have a specific questions around, is this possible, right? So then you don't have to like go, like nobody would say like this is possible in their blog, right? So they would say like how it works or something, right? So, but if you put this question, is this possible in the Google, right? Like, so if you want to check like if something is feasible, if you just say, so the Bing will give you a specific answer saying that yes, it's feasible, and then it will give the citations as well, right? So that is an option in the Bing called Bing Chat, so with which you can search, and Google has this in an experimental mode as well. Like if you go to Google and then I think labs.google.com, and if you can go and sign up for that, and you'll be able to access Google Converse, and with which like you'll be able to ask a question, and then you will be able to get an answer which is very specific for your question. So you don't have to like go to the multiple documents and then like interpret that and then like come up with an answer, right? So this is going to save you a lot of time, right? So that's what is going to happen in the websites as well. So now a lot of websites are moving towards this AI-driven chatbot experience, right? So either as a chatbot or just as a Q&A, right? Like so Sitecore.com has already integrated the Q&A, and most of the sites have integrated the Q&A, the conversational search in their implementation, and the conversational chatbots are also coming up. A lot of companies are working on it as well. So this helps us to get high quality responses to the customer. The customer need not spend a lot of time in the search, like going through multiple articles. Sometimes like it helps with user retention as well. So if they don't find the article that they're looking for, they would move on to another site, right? So in our case, like if you have this AI-driven chatbot integrated, it will give specific answer to the customer. So even though if it doesn't have, like for instance, like if a customer is searching for a specific term, and if the term is not available in your website, or if its closest synonymous is not available in the website, then you might be providing a no search results found, right? But now this AI-driven chatbots and these conversational search, like they're able to understand English as well, right? So all of these natural language processing are inbuilt within these systems. So they will be able to understand the question from the customer, the specific term, and they'll be able to provide the relevant answers, like which won't be available with the keyword search, right? So high quality responses to the customer, multiple language support. So these systems, I think OpenAI supports more than 50 languages, right? So if if some user is coming from Texas region, and if he speaks Spanish fluently, he can ask the question in Spanish, and our AI-driven chatbot would convert that into English and search through the documents and then give the response back in Spanish, which is a powerful feature, right? So you don't have to do a lot of work for it. You don't have to tie up with any translation vendor for this. This comes all inbuilt with OpenAI. And faster retrieval of data. So you can get what you need within a few seconds instead of a few minutes. And personalized interaction as well. So for instance, if it's a commerce website, and if a customer has purchased something already in your site, so you don't have to explain about your site, like you don't have to like sell something about your site to the customer, you just have to sell the product, right? So this type of personalized interaction is feasible with the AI-driven chatbot. So you could probably like give a context of the user, what the user is familiar with, and all of these details. So it understands all of these, like how many products he has purchased, how many times he has visited the site, like any kind of analytics, so that the AI-driven chatbot like won't start from the beginning. Like it will start from a point where the customer knows things already, right? For instance, if he has bought a product already, the AI-driven chatbot can say that, so the add-on that you're trying to buy like will work with this or won't work with this, so don't buy this. Like here are the other options, right? So those type of things are automatic nowadays if you integrate AI chatbot. And also the user sentiment analysis, like if there is a customer complaint, right? So the AI-driven chatbot can understand the user's tone as well, right? If somebody is expressing frustration, then it understands that, it escalates it to the right team. Like you can probably code that without any effort, right? Like so similar to like how you will code for simple keyword search, like you could just call those APIs and get this to working. So we have these options available with semantic kernel. Like if you're using Python, you have LangChain and all of these. But and even if you're using Azure OpenAI itself, like it builds all of these out of the scratch. Like we'll see how that works, and you just have to like go and tweak a few things. Right? And cost efficiency. So OpenAI, I think the OpenAI GPT-4 costs about 1 cent per request. And if you're using GPT 3.5, it's I think like $0.0012, something like that. So it's very cheap per request, right? So you can like even if a customer is like making like about like 10 or 20 infractions, it won't cost much, right? Which is much cheaper than placing a real human being like behind the screens, like responding to the customer, right? And it gathers business insights and all like if a AI-driven chatbot is integrated, right? So it can probably so look at all the questions that are asked by the customers, and it can give the feedback back to your client, saying that like a lot of people are looking for these, and so these are the issues that they're facing. Like it can kind of like come up with the business insights as well, right? So you don't have to like set up a feedback form on your site. Like so this itself like will give you the feedback of what the user sentiment is, like where you have to focus on, where you have to improve, like those things. So you don't have to like have even a data analyst like sitting and analyzing all the data, right? Like a lot of companies are not equipped with data analysts. Like those companies can take this as an opportunity to like gain insights from the AI chatbot as well. And introduction to OpenAI. So as we all know, OpenAI is an AI research organization. It was so the term was coined based on they initially wanted to give this AI for free, but then later things changed. Microsoft funded this organization, and then but still like the cost that they're charging is very cheap. Like it's not expensive, and they developed several AI models, including the GPT model, generative pre-trained transformer model. So the meaning is like you don't have to train these models. These models are pre-trained on billions of pages, right? So they understand English, they understand natural language processing, and these GPT models are of type large language model, which predicts the next best word in the loop. So how it works is, in case if you go to ChatGPT and if you just ask what is LLM, so then what it first does is like it just predicts the first word for it. Now it would just start with the or like LLM, right? And then it would predict the next word based on what is the first word, what it has already, right? So if it has predicted the first word as LLM, so then it would it has been trained on I think like billions of pages, right? I think 8 billion pages or something. So it would it knows all of these knowledge. It has all of these. So based on that knowledge, like it would predict the next word. So if it's LLM, so the next word is LLM is. right? So then it would use LLMS, and then it would just go back into this transformer and all of these, like whatever it has, and then it would just predict the next best word, right? LLM is the right. Likewise, it actually goes on a loop and then find what is the next best word based on whatever it has formed already. This is what it does, and then it completes a sentence, and then it will provide you the answers. So that is why you see, if you notice, right? So it takes a lot of time to like for it to like process what is the next best word in a sentence, right? So to complete a sentence, it takes some time. So what it does is like if you go to the chat GPT and if you type in a question, like it doesn't provide the answer instantaneously like how it happens in Google search, right? So if you go to Google search, if you just like type in something, you get the all the 10 records immediately, right? But that doesn't happen with ChatGPT because it is basically generating what is the next best word behind the scenes. That's why like you see, so it actually like provides answer in a generative fashion, like so you will see like you will see like it is basically typing. It's not an animation. It's basically behind the scenes. It's just working, and then it's just finding the next best option and providing you completing the sentence as a whole. And these GPT models are pre-trained on vast data sets, so it understands the language pattern, grammar, context, all of these. And this GPT 3.5, it consists of 175 billion parameters, and GPT-4 is said to have 1.76 trillion parameter with which it predicts the relevancy and accuracy. And so in order to understand this concept, we have to take a step back and go back to our college days, right? Like, so where we have learned this neural network and all. So here, so you could see like we have multiple inputs here, right? So this is basically an example of how a neuron will look like, an artificial neuron will look like. It'll have inputs, it has the node, and then it's kind of like a processor you can think of, and then it has an output. And here, so how the training works is, so these inputs have to be fed by human being, right? So we have to provide an input and we have to tune it in such a way to get an output that we need, right? So the input can be like, if you want to like in a real world, like if you want to like build a specific calculator, like which will tell you like if you could afford a coffee, let's say, as an example, right? So then the inputs could be, first thing is like, I want a coffee. The second one will be, I have $5, okay? The third one is the coffee costs $4, let's say, okay? And if you put all of these inputs, then ideally your expectation is it should return an answer yes, right? But if it returns an answer no or something, then you'll basically like add these weights. Okay, so these are numerical inputs and bias. So which you will be tuning to get an answer yes, right? So because it doesn't understand, I mean, it's just a neuron like without any knowledge, right? So you'll basically tune these weights and bias to get the output that you need, right? And next, you will do this in an iterative fashion, right? So you'll have these three inputs. Out of these three inputs, you'll keep the two inputs. Like the first input, I want a coffee, and then I have $5. And the third input, you will change like instead of like coffee is like $3, you will change like coffee is $5. Or the other way, like instead of you have $5, you might change it to like I have only $2, right? So then when you say like you have only $2, it should ideally respond with the answer no, right? So then they'll go and people will go and train these weights and bias in such a way that it responds with an answer no. Likewise, in an iterative fashion, they basically change these inputs, tune these weights and bias in such a way that it gives an output, right? The output that we need, right? The output that we expect. And the power comes when multiple neurons are plugged together, right? So the tuning one single neuron is easy. Like you can just like put in the weight, bias, some mathematical things like these formulas and all, and then get this working. But then you will have to put a lot of effort, like in plugging all of these together, right? But when that is done, so it will be able to kind of understand. The inputs will be the billions of pages that I mentioned to you, right? In case of ChatGPT, the billions of pages will be the input, and it's kind of like trained, and then like it's kind of, so that's why it is called like a generative pre-trained transformer. And in our case, like so once it is trained, right? Like so if you put in these if you go to ChatGPT and if you put in a question like what is LLM, so it basically for generating like every token or every word, like it will basically come past those ones as input here, right? And then the question as input, and then like whatever it has formed already, like all of these like will become the input, and then it will go through these neural network, and then the next best response is predicted, which will be the output, right? So that's what it happens. And here, the weight and bias that I mentioned in the previous one, like, and also you can see here, so those are the parameters, right? So GPT 3.5 has 175 billion parameters, and GPT-4 has 1.76 trillion parameters. This is something like which they haven't officially confirmed, but this is what like it is said to believe, right? Like based on those their press meetings and all, like this is what they people believe, and this is a huge number, as you can see, right? Only with which like they are able to tune it, right? So it's not like one or two parameters like in the previous single neuron, right? Like it has 175 billion parameters and 1.76 trillion parameters, with which like it is vast. So only with which like it is able to predict the response, and it has to pass through like all of these, right? So that's why it takes time to like generate those responses, but it's not too high. Like it just takes let's say like 0.5 seconds for every word or something. Like it just like generates this, and then within like 20 seconds, like you'll have the entire response. And the other benefit is it provides REST API support, right? It just doesn't work standalone. Like it gives REST API option for us to integrate our applications into it. So that is one of the key benefits, so that we can apply it for the real world mechanisms. And OpenAI models can also be fine-tuned for specific tasks, right? So so OpenAI comes with all of these models, right? GPT 3.5, GPT-4, and all. So all of these are trained based on the English that is available in the internet, right? But there are chances that like you might want to like change your language or change specific things for the customer, right? And most of the times you will be able to achieve this with the proper prompt engineering, providing the context and all of these, right? But very cases, like if you're building like a super enterprise application, like there are chances that you may not be able to achieve these with proper prompt engineering, like giving like context and all of these. So then you might end up doing a fine tuning, and the reason you will not do this fine tuning or fine tuning often is it's expensive, right? So in order to host a fine tuning model, you may need to pay $5,000, right? So once it is per month, and if you want to like do something very extensive, and if it's not achievable with the existing models, only then you will create a custom model by this fine tuning operation by providing your own data sets, right? And then you'll be able to make it work for specific tasks. And it is something like it works well, like it doesn't work really. I mean, you may not do a fine tuning for a chatbot unless there is very specific requirement. But if you want to like do something different, like a lot of mathematical calculations or something with this AI, then you will do something like fine tuning and getting your custom model generator. Right? And this chat GPT is a specific implementation of GPT models. It's the GPT models are the core product of this AI organization, right? ChatGPT is just a specific implementation, so which is kind of like a proof that the GPT model works. Like they have to like build something to showcase to the people outside, so that's why they built this. But ChatGPT became very popular. And these are some of the key OpenAI concepts that you will need to understand. The first one is the prompts, right? So the user, if you go to ChatGPT and if you provided an user input, right? So let's say like if you're working on a presentation, right? And if you want to, if you have a specific article and that needs to be converted into like, let's say bullet points or something, right? So then what you will do is like, you'll ask the ChatGPT, you'll ask the ChatGPT to summarize whatever you are providing as an input, right? So that will become the instruction. Like you will say like, summarize this for me. And then the context is, so you can say like, this is for a presentation that I'm preparing, right? So then it understands, like if you say like, if you give a different context that like, I need to, this is for a documentation or something, like it might give it in a different type of tone, right? So, but if you say if it's for a presentation, it will follow a specific tone. So that is context. And the input data is something that you provide, right? So if you provide a paragraph and then ask it to summarize, then that paragraph is the input data. And the output indicator is the bullet points, right? So you can say like, I need 5 bullet points, 10 bullet points and all. And it would just give the response in the way that you want. And yeah, all of these comprises of the prompts, right? And in the real world, we will be supplying some information about our website or user. So all of these will become part of the context, right? So if you're building an enterprise chatbot for your existing website, then so those all will be part of the context. And the completion is just the response that you get from the ChatGPT. And the tokens are basically chunks of text, right? So let's take the word chunk, right? So this is a single word, but ChatGPT or the GPT models, right? So they don't understand English, right? So they basically, they don't understand English behind the scenes. Like they have to like translate all of these into numerical formats, vector embeddings. So I'll show you like how a vector embedding will look like in the upcoming slides. So they have to like break all of these into like this chunk can be like CHU can be one token, NK can be another token, S can be another token, right? So they basically break this word down into multiple chunks, and each of those will be called as token, and those will be converted into an embedding format like mathematical format, so that the ChatGPT will be able to understand behind the scenes. And prompt engineering is the process of crafting effective prompts. So if you have so these the prompts which I mentioned, right? So if the more and more you give the context, the ChatGPT will be able to respond in the way that you want. So that's basically called the prompt engineering. And plugins. So these are the things like which were introduced in the ChatGPT, right? The ChatGPT out of the box doesn't help for us like to integrate to our website. Like so it has all the knowledge. So whatever you're typing in Google, like you can go to ChatGPT and ask it as well, right? So the previous version of ChatGPT, the ChatGPT 3.5 was trained only until September 2021. But the recent version, like last week, in their Dev Day conference, they released a new version, like which is trained till April 2023, right? So it will not be able to like give you a real-time information, but it has data until April 2023, right? Like you'll be able to ask a question, and then it will be able to like provide you an answer with as well. But you'll not be able to gain some benefits with it because you are not able to inject your data into it, right? So that's the reason ChatGPT brought this concept called ChatGPT plugins, like where you could inject your data. You can build an API, like which will be the data source for all of these ChatGPT plugin, right? And if you plug this in with your system, so then the API will come up with a response. And if somebody goes to the ChatGPT plugin and if they type in a question, then it will be a responding answer based on the data that you supplied, right? But one problem with this is like the ChatGPT plugin doesn't have an API support, right? So you cannot get this out and then like put this in your website, right? So somebody has to go to ChatGPT Plus. They have to pay, I think, $20 per month or something, and then they have to type in this, go to this specific ChatGPT plugin, and they have to type in the question, right? And so moving on to fine tuning. So we discussed about the fine tuning in the previous slide. So it's basically if something is not working for you, you have to fine tune that, like create a custom model and then make it work for your case. That's fine tuning. So how this OpenAI models work? So we touched some of these in the previous slide, but I'll give you a quick flow chart view so that you will be able to understand. So when the user provides the input, it basically does the tokenization, right? So which means like it breaks those words into smaller chunks so that it can convert all of those into word embeddings, which is a numerical format. So these are basically vectors. So vectors are like, so in our college days, like we might have learned about those vectors, right? Like, so we might have like worked on two-dimensional graphs, like even three-dimensional graphs, like, but this case, ChatGPT actually uses like hundreds of dimensions, right? So so we'll see how that works. Like I can show you during the demo as well. So it includes, it has like hundreds of dimensions, and with which like it basically like finds like which word is closer to what. Like if you take an example of the word right, right? So the right has two meanings, right? So one is opposite of left, and the other word, other meaning of right is like if you're saying like something is correct or something, right? So then you will say the word right. And if you take an example of fall, the fall has multiple meanings as well. Like fall is a season. So if somebody falls down, like we'll say fall, like so those type of things, right? So every word, like if you take leave or something, right? Like multiple words, like in English, like almost every word, right, has 2-3 different meanings depending on the context, right? So the ChatGPT that is one of the challenges that they face, right? So every word doesn't have unique meaning, right? So every word has 2-3 different meanings, and it can only be interpreted when it's put in a sentence, right? So that's why this embedding concept is important. So for every word, the ChatGPT or the GPT model like basically converts that into embeddings, so that it'll be in a multi-dimensional space with which when we put in a query, it will be able to like convert the question as well into embeddings. And those embeddings will be matched, and then it will be found if it's whatever is the closest will be brought back as an answer, right? So that's the high-level concept of embedding. But when we look at the demo, like you will be able to understand more. And then these embeddings are passed into the neural network, right? So these are the inputs for those neural network, which we saw in the first slide. And it basically goes through the neural network. It does the token prediction, so which will be the output of the neural network. and then it decodes it into English, and then it would send it back to the front end website, right? The ChatGPT user interface, and this is done in an iterative fashion, right? So after it predicts a token, like it just goes to the neural network again, like finds the next best word, like that. It does this in an iterative fashion, and also then in parallel it decodes, and then it sends the response out as well. So this ChatGPT and OpenAI models, all of these are very powerful, right? But there is one challenge here. So if you want to extend this for your implementation, if you want to extend this for your website, like build a chatbot, then it's very hard, right? But recently this has changed. So I've just included a start, but I'll cover this portion in my upcoming slide. Like last week in the Dev Day conference, they announced a new model which overcomes this specific issue. So which we'll be able to understand more. But at a high level, the previous ChatGPT models, before this ChatGPT 4 Turbo was still released, like all of these models, the fine tuning is very hard, right? Like, so if you want to make it work for a specific implementation, like with your own data set, then you have to go through this process of fine tuning, like where you will have to upload your data as training sets. Like you have to prepare the training sets, but it's really hard. It's kind of like a question answer kind of thing. Like it's kind of it's really hard. Like you have to spend a lot of time preparing those training data sets, and then make it work for your use case, and all of these are hard. And ChatGPT plugin solves this issue, but it is not accessible via API, right? So that is another issue. And the other issue with these OpenAI models is usability, right? So it doesn't have a lot of flexibility. The user interface that you get with OpenAI is pretty simple, right? Like it doesn't have multiple options like how we typically get in Azure, right? So in Azure, if you want to build a specific app service, or let's say as an example, right? So it has multiple options. It just doesn't spin up the app service, right? So it has security features, multiple things, like giving access to specific individual role-based access, and also those specific capabilities like scaling up, scaling down. Like all of these options are available with Azure, right? But we don't have those many flexibility in the ChatGPT, and also the interface that we get is not very convincing enough to build the enterprise website. So that's why recently, I've heard that a lot of enterprise organizations haven't preferred working directly with the OpenAI, bringing their enterprise data directly into the OpenAI because of certain restrictions, right? And there are reliability issues with OpenAI API as well. So it has gone through 1 to 2 outages per month. Like if you look at the history, if you go to status.openai.com, so you'll be able to look at the history. So it has got multiple outages in the past. And even when I was preparing this presentation, there was an outage. I had some hiccups as well. So in order to solve all of these, right? So now we move to Microsoft, Microsoft Azure OpenAI service, which solves all of these gaps which I mentioned on the previous slide. The first one is extensibility. So it has released a new feature called Bring Your Own Data. So it was released around August or July, I believe. So what it does is you don't have to fine tune your models to make it work for your case, right? So you can just inject your model, and it has a mechanism with which it understands all of the data that you supply, and then it will give you the response. It's called retrieval augmented generation. So I have covered what is retrieval augmented generation in the next slide as well. And the other thing is about security, right? So this Microsoft Azure OpenAI has these advanced security controls. If you want to have user restrictions, so with enterprise organization, there will be multiple people, right? So you cannot give the entire access to everybody. You have to restrict the access for a specific index or for a specific OpenAI model, all of these. So these are feasible with Azure OpenAI as well. And it's also scalable, right? It is available in multiple regions. It's also reliable. It has 99.9% SLA, similar to other Azure services that you will have. And the usability perspective, they have offered AI Studio and also AI Content Safety Studio. So this will be very helpful to build these capabilities. I'll show you in the demo. And also the AI Content Safety Studio, that will help you to add certain content filters and all, right? So for instance, if you're capturing input from the user as part of this chatbot, so then you have to validate and you have to sanitize and make sure it's not harmful, right? So you have to validate the content if it's accurate and all of these, right? So for that, this Content Safety Studio comes out of the box with the Microsoft products, and you'll be able to get a lot of benefit from this. Okay. So we discussed about the retrieval augmented generation in the previous slide. So how we can bring our own data into this OpenAI, right? So this process retrieval augmented generation is kind of an approach which was developed. So it involves like multiple products like cognitive search, Azure OpenAI, and also blob storage, right? So all of these have to be plugged in together. So how it works is like if a user asks a question to the chatbot, so then we have to write some code to query the business data, the Azure Cognitive Search, so basically the user input that we give, right? Which has to be like converted into the embeddings, and then Azure Cognitive Search supports native vector embedding. Like I'll show you that to you in the demo as well. So when you inject some data into that, like you will be able to like store it in a vector format. Like you can make a request to OpenAI, convert that into embeddings. The specific text that you're pushing to the Azure Cognitive Search, you can convert that into embeddings, and then you can store that as part of the same record in Cognitive Search. That vector field is supported. I think they introduced the support a couple of months back, I think. So with which you'll have all of these options within the Cognitive Search. So when a user asks a question, you can convert that into embeddings, and then that embeddings can be compared with whatever you have in the Cognitive Search, and then you can get those results, right? So here the OpenAI doesn't come into picture yet. So you have to like get the results that you need, right? Which are very relevant to whatever the user has asked for. And then you will build a prompt with these search results, right? So all of these have to be through your coding. And then you will include the user question as well. And then you will query the model. So here is where you will invoke the OpenAI. So before you reach the OpenAI itself, like you will basically query the results and find whatever is the closest match using the vector embedding concept. And then you will add the question as well, and you will just push it to the Azure OpenAI, right? So now Azure OpenAI will be able to respond to these questions in an effective way because it has the data as well. So which is basically the input data you can think of. Like if you remember in one of the previous slides, so I was telling you what is prompt, right? So it includes the input data, right? So that input data is what like we are preparing. So this is called the retrieval augmented generation approach. And with that input data, so we are injecting the question as well, and we are sending it to the Azure OpenAI, and we'll get the response. And so moving on to how you could build a chat experience, right? So the first approach is, so if you have XM Cloud, so if you have already migrated to XM Cloud, and then if you have Sitecore Search as well, so then it's easy. Sitecore Search has partnered with another partner called Nolly, and they have built this capability now within the product itself. So when you publish any request, so the request goes to XM Cloud, and then from there, you can index the content with Sitecore Search, and Sitecore Search has this capability inbuilt, like with which like it generates those embeddings and all, and then if you build a chatbot option within your website, and if you send the prompt, it'll be able to like give you back with a response. So it's pretty simple. Like it's just composable, right? So you just compose all of these, and Sitecore, if you want to parse any documents, right? Sitecore Search already accepts like documents by itself, right? So you don't really need Sitecore Connect, but if you want to like parse the documents, or if you want to like pick certain portions of the document or something, like if you want a very custom requirement, you could probably include Sitecore Connect as well. You could inject all of your documents, and then the Sitecore Connect will with which you can actually parse, and then you can just index the documents into the Sitecore Search as well. So you can index your data and content, and then the chatbot will be able to get the response back, right? So here the target audience is somebody who has XM Cloud already, Sitecore Search already, and if somebody is looking for like low maintenance and quicker setup. So for those people, like this works best, right? But one challenge is like this AI is a pressing need, right? So we want to integrate AI into our site like pretty fast. Like we are getting like a lot of fractions from the public, right? Like so into this, like so we have to like integrate this soon, but a lot of times, like I mean, not a lot of customers have migrated to this XM Cloud and XM headless approach, right? So most of the customers are still in XP. So that's why we need the next option. So which is combining Sitecore with Azure OpenAI. So here, when a content author publishes a request, right? So it goes to Sitecore XP, and from the Sitecore XP, we have to take that content, generate the embeddings using this embedding model, right? So Azure OpenAI has two models. One is embedding model, which generates the embedding for whatever input that you pass. And then it includes the GPT-4 model, like which is trained on those vast data set, right? Like, so which gives you the completion for the prompts that you send. So now the first step is like we have to generate the embeddings here, right? So from the embedding model, and once we get the embedding, we have to push that content into the cognitive search. So basically, you have to push the content along with the embeddings into the cognitive search. So we'll see like how those looks like in the demo portion as well. And then from the blob storage, if you need any specific content, right, those PDF documents or PPT or anything else, like now it supports Cosmos DB as well. Like you could just directly push Cosmos DB into the cognitive search. So this part is kind of automatic. So when you push everything into the blob storage, it generates those indexes, and that is one challenge with this embedding model that you see here, and also the GPT-4 model, right? Like all of these have those token limitations, right? So they cannot. There is no unlimited token limitation. Like when you push in a data, like you have to like basically chunk it, right? So when you push content, like we may not reach that token limit, but when you push those PDFs, right? So those large PDFs. So you will be reaching that. That I think it accepts only 2048 tokens per request. So we may exceed that request, right? Exceed that token limit. So we have to create chunks. So we have to break the PDF into multiple portions, and then we have to generate embeddings for each individual portions, and then we have to push it into the cognitive search as a separate documents, right? So if it's a big document like which has like which has let's say like 15 pages, then that has to be broken down into 3 or 4, and then it has to be converted and it has to be pushed into the cognitive search, right? So that is one challenge. But the good thing is like when you use Azure OpenAI, right? Azure OpenAI is the AI Studio. So that AI Studio builds whatever you see within the box, right? All of these comes out of the box with that, right? So you don't have to like manually go and like create these ones, the chat web app and all. So all of these comes out of the box. So I'm just going to use like whatever it has automatically created, right? In my demo. So here basically it pushes the thing, pushes the content, and also we can actually push the content, the data as well. And then what happens is when from the chatbot, if somebody is pushing in a query, right? So if somebody is asking a question, then it goes to the chat web app, and this is an app service like which is based on Python. This comes out of the box with the demo. But if you want to like use C# semantic kernel, like you can change this web app as well, like or whatever you see here within the box is also configurable, right? So you can go with your custom cognitive search, or if you can go with your existing blob storage that you're using for Sitecore media library, right? So all of these can be customized, but the thing is overall, this whatever you see within the box is auto-generated, and you just have to like plug and play. And so here, when the user sends the query, like the query comes here, it comes to the chat web app. The chat web app pushes that query. It converts that into embeddings, and then it pushes that embedding into the cognitive search. And basically, the cognitive search, what it does is it finds the documents which are the closest match for those embeddings, right? And it just sends back, let's say, like it has thousands of documents. It will find maybe like 5 documents are closest to that. Right, so then those 5 documents will be sent back. So that is called grounding, right? So we are basically like taking like only whatever we need from the cognitive search, and we are preparing the prompt here, right? So the prompt will include this input data which we receive from the cognitive search, and then it will also include the question from the user, right? So the chat web app does that. So it creates that prompt and it pushes that to this GPT-4 model, and the GPT-4 model responds back to the completion, which will be sent back to the front-end website. Right. So this follows the retrieval augmented generation approach itself. So you'll push the content, you'll push the data, and then so this is how it works. Like it basically the chat web app gets the input data, filter data from the cognitive search, and then it makes a query here. Right. And here I have built one module called a chatbot module. So it's available in GitHub. It's a Sitecore PowerShell module. Now I've included the link of that as well. I'll show you the features of that in the next slide. And what it does is it basically generates this embedding automatically. So you just need to install the module, and then you have to just configure which templates and fields have to be included. And it automatically generates the embedding. Whenever a content publishes the content, it automatically captures those embeddings, pushes that into the cognitive search. And then you can just integrate the chatbot, which comes out of the box with Azure OpenAI, right? So the process will be pretty simple. Like so, this chatbot is already built along with all of these capabilities. If you just follow few steps, like which have highlighted here, right? Like, so if you go to the OpenAI Studio and Azure AI Studio, and if you just follow the steps, like there will be like only 5-6 steps. Now, so I've covered that in my GitHub documentation. So you just need to follow the steps, like and you will see all of these generated as well. And then if you install this SPA module and just configure a couple of things like those, the client IDs, like all of these and all, so it automatically like pushes the content as well. So here, the target audience will be the people with composable solutions with Sitecore XM Cloud, but if they don't have the Sitecore Search, or someone like who's looking for some flexibility in configuring how things get pushed into these specific elements, right? And also the monolith solutions, like people who are using XP currently, they can use this. And then the people who are looking for fine-tuning options, right? So because fine-tuning may not be available with the previous option. So if you want to like do a lot of fine-tuning, like you can go with this. And if you want content filters, like if you want to make use of this Azure a Content Safety Studio, then you can make use of this option. And if you want extensive customizations, like if you want to change how this web app works, or any of these, you can go with this approach. And if you want to create a personalized experience, like pushing in the context of the user, right? So when you prepare this grounding, like you could probably add another API, like which basically feeds the user's information, user's historical information when you generate the prompt, which goes into the ChatGPT 4 model, right? So when you want to like build a personalized experience, you could go with this approach. And then if you want additional database support, like recently the Cosmos DB has been supported with this direct integration with the cognitive search as well. And there are multiple data sources which are getting added by Microsoft every day, right? And there are plugin support as well. So in the beginning of the call, I mentioned about translations, right? If you want translations to work as well, so you just have to like enable the translation plugin, so which comes out of the box with this AI Studio. So when you go to AI Studio, like you'll have options to enable the plugins. I think it's still in the preview mode, but it should still be available for public. Okay. So now these are the features of the module that I mentioned in the previous slide. So it includes it is built with the SPA approach, and also it's customizable and extensible. So you can just like clone the GitHub repository, serialized, like take over the serialized files into your system, and then you can tweak those functions as well. And it indexes the published content. So when somebody publishes, it indexes the published content into the cognitive search. So you'll be able to select the templates and fields to be indexed. It generates the embeddings. It sanitizes the content as well. So this helps when there are more rich text fields, right? So because it includes like break tags, p tags, and all of these, right? So you don't have to like convert those ones into embeddings, right? So you can just like strip all of those and then generate the embeddings without those specific HTML tags as well. And it also does some kind of like encoding, because like you'll have like so those double quotes like may not be directly encoded, and also so you have to like just encode this and then generate embedding. So all of these are taken care now within the module, and it also adds a page URL as a unique identifier for these citations, right? So when the user asks a question, and when the chatbot responds with a response, right? Like so at that time, like it has to include a citation mentioning from what page it came from, right? So this module includes those page URL for citations as well. And also it works with individual bulk publish. Like if you want to do it for the first time, like publish multiple items together, including sub items, that will also get indexed. And it executes indexing as a post-publish job. So the content author need not wait for the publishing to be complete. So it happens in a background job format. And it includes security best practices like those role-based access control. So instead of API key, so API key is not a recommended approach, right? Like we have to go with role-based access control, so that we'll have like more options to control the security, like who has to access and all of these. So those best practices are part of the module as well. So I'll show you a demo, and then I'll pause for some questions, right? So I've taken the Lighthouse demo from Sitecore. So since I wanted to showcase this XP thing, so I've taken the Lighthouse one. And so here is the module. So under PowerShell, under script library, a chatbot. So you have, so this is the event handler, so which will get triggered after every publish. And then here you can see those functions, PowerShell functions, which you can tweak. And here it includes the settings. And since it's a demo, right? So I've it's kind of like so in production environments, like you cannot store these credentials in the Sitecore itself, right? Because Sitecore is not meant for that. So, but this is for the demo. And if you want to try something, like I just want to like give you a quick option. So that's why I included in this, but I've added a disclaimer here that like you should move it to your Azure Key Vault or any established solution for your implementation. So you should not like store it here. So I'll go back and change all of these. So it's just like for the demo, I'm just showing you like whatever we have here. So it includes that the resource name, the embedding model, the API version, and also the cognitive search, right, to which it has to push the content into. And here we have the option to select the templates as well. So these two templates I've selected. And then I've included the fields as well, whatever fields has to be indexed. Right, so and then, so if I just go to this, so here, so right now the cognitive search doesn't have anything. And then here is my blob. And then, so this is the Azure OpenAI Studio, which I was mentioning, right? So here I have added, so there are some specific, like 4 or 5 steps, like if you want to like create, like if you come to this OpenAI Studio, if you create an OpenAI and then if you navigate it to this specific location, like, I mean, you'll be able to, you'll have the link from the Azure portal itself to navigate to the AI Studio. And when you come to the AI Studio, like you'll have an option to add your own data. So I've just added this here, right? And when you add it, like it will just give you an option to like what can be your data source, and you can probably like select the blob, cognitive search, and all of these. And then you'll have this chat playground here where you can test if it's working fine. So you have like some parameters like which you can change here, like based on like there are stop sequences, like the frequency penalty. So if you want a word to be repeated or not to be repeated, and if you want like creative responses or not creative responses, so those type of options, like so you can probably like read through this instruction and set up these parameters. And once you do that, like you can deploy to a new web app, right? So when you do this, it will generate a web app. And what I've already created the web app for us here. And I'll now put in some questions here, right? So I've used the out-of-the-box Lighthouse content, right? So when I put in these questions, like it's saying like it doesn't have any response, right? And I also have a Sitecore PDF, Sitecore e-learning PDF. So I'm just asking what are the e-learnings you have, and it says it doesn't have right now. And this is the PDF that I'm going to upload. So which includes like all of these. And here you can see like it is in a table format, right? Like it has, but OpenAI understands this, right? So it basically understands like this is the heading and this is the response for that, right? Like so it basically like it interprets the PDF like in a powerful way, like it understands all of these things. And now if I go in here and I'm going to publish this articles here. So I'm publishing along with the sub items. And so here you can see this kitchen appliances, right? So here is where we have those latest trends covered, but not in a direct way, right? So it is just like the latest trends are like part of each of these sections. Like so if it's a keyword search, right, the user has to go through this entire article to understand what is the latest trend, like as an example, right? So, but in our case, like this OpenAI will actually pick the specific sentences of it, so he need not like go through the entire article itself, right? So now if we come to this, so here you see we have the content, like whatever we have published, right? The content and then the title, and it includes the URL as well. And then here you see this content vector. So this is what I was explaining in the beginning, like it includes multiple dimensions, right? I think this specific one includes about, I think 200, 300 dimensions, I think, right? So this is basically a numerical vector-based representation of like what you see here as the content. Right, so only with which like it understands like what is close to each other, like those relevancy, those accuracy, and then it responds back with an answer. Right, so this is for the retrieval augmented generation part of the slide. And then I'm going to upload this one here. Okay. So typically, so when we upload this file, right, so it has a lot of pages, like it would get broken down into multiple chunks, and then it would get indexed, right? Each of these chunks would get indexed into this specific index, right? but it takes about like 5 minutes, right? So I've just configured it to run every 5 minutes. Like I was not able to like go below that. So just for the demo purpose, I'm going to like trigger these indexes manually. So this is the first indexer. What it does is it basically indexes the first version, right? And then it creates chunks of it, right? The specific PDF which we have uploaded, so that is getting indexed into this specific index, but then it's just for reference. It breaks it down into multiple chunks. So in the blob, like if you go, that is another blob that is created, like where it breaks it down into multiple chunks, right? There will be like 4 files there. So now if I specifically go and index the next indexer, right? So it has created for 4 files, and then like now those 4 files have got indexed into our index here, right? So this specific index, like it, so here like you'll be able to like see those ones indexed as well. So now if I go to the next, and then like now if I put in the same question, it should get me those answers. So here you can see like it is just like it is not giving me the entire article as it is, but it is just like specifically picking only whatever is like related to the latest trends, right? So here it includes the reference as well. So the kitchen appliances, right? So with which like you could basically like so here it includes the citation as a text format. Like you can also configure it to redirect to your website as well. And the next one is from the PDF, right? So if you just go into this, if I put in the same question, so it just gives me the same response. Like it basically, as I mentioned earlier, like it understands like what is the title, and even though the PDF is structured in a different format, it understands that, and it gives like. And if you can ask with like more follow-up questions, and it would respond back with right answers. Okay. Any questions, team, before I move on?
Yep, I guess all good.
Okay, sounds good. And yeah, so in the beginning of the call, like remember I was mentioning like in the Dev Day conference, they introduced a new model, right? So that model basically simplifies like whatever you have seen in the previous slide. So this is in the beta mode right now, right? It was released only 1 week back. And here, if you choose to use this GPT 3.5 Turbo 1106 or GPT-4 1106 preview, so then you don't have to like do whatever you saw in the box, right? Like which includes the cognitive search, blob, all of these. So those ones are not needed anymore. So you can just directly use the model, and it auto generates those embeddings. So you don't need to generate the embeddings by yourself, and you don't have to like do those chunking mechanism which I mentioned earlier, and you don't have to like do those grounding mechanism, like including those input and everything, right? And basically you will just like you'll do a publishing request, and from Sitecore you have to push the content as files, right? It just supports only files right now, so it doesn't support like injecting content. So you have to like create those content. You have to just generate in a TXT format, and then you have to use the files in Assistant API, and you have to push that into OpenAI. Okay. And you can directly upload files as well. Like if you have external data, you can directly upload those files into the OpenAI. And now if you integrate this chatbot into your website, like it queries, and then you need to create your own chat web app, like because it has only those APIs, right? But it's pretty easy. Like you don't have to like maintain those history or something, right? So one of the things which I missed to mention in the previous slide was, so every time like when the user asks a question, right? So when they ask the second question, so you have to include the previous response as well, so that then only like it understands the context, the history, and it responds, right? So that was done by the chat web app out of the box in the previous slide. But here also, like you don't need to like do it by yourself, right? Like or with any custom coding. There is an option called threading available within the OpenAI now, right? So it includes the threads, and you can just you just need to like know like which user session is connected to which thread of OpenAI. And with that, like you will be able to, you can just pass the follow-up questions in the same thread, and OpenAI maintains those history as well, right? So this takes away a lot of things and makes things simpler as well, right? So you don't have to like do a lot of work. But there is one challenge here, like the other issues that I mentioned with the OpenAI, right? the usability and the reliability, all of these issues like remain as it is, right? So if you don't have like too much of enterprise data, like or don't not having any compliance issues, or if you have like very simple requirement, you could just like go with this now. But if you have like those complex requirements, it is better that like you would wait for like maybe like 3-4 weeks, right? So so that these models will get incorporated into Microsoft Azure OpenAI as well, and this will be served by Azure OpenAI as well, and you could probably use these models, right? So these models are right now not available with Azure OpenAI, right? So they both are partners, right? So typically when OpenAI release a model, so after a few weeks, like it would get incorporated into Microsoft at the same cost, right? So whatever cost you'll pay with OpenAI, the same cost you'll pay with Azure OpenAI as well. So they are partners. But right now these are not available. So I'll cover a quick demo of how this works as well, so you'll get an idea. And all of these, like the target audience, everything remains the same except those usability and reliability, for which you may need to wait for some time, right? And there is another thing as well. So if you want like more customization still, and if you want to like work through those blobs, or like if you want to like work through those cognitive search, like if you want to like tweak things and like work on individual elements for some reason, right? So for an enterprise application, you might still want to like go back to the previous approach as well, right? So you may not, all of these are out of the box with the OpenAI model, but still like there are chances that like you might still need the model for in certain cases, the previous approach in certain cases. So a quick demo of this one here. So yeah, this is OpenAI. So what I've done is I've created an assistant here, right? So here you can see this under the assistants. I've just like created an assistant, and creating an assistant is pretty simple. Like you have to just like click on create assistant, and you have to just fill in these details, the name, the instructions. Like if you want, you can something or like it's an instruction, right? So that it would frame up the response in that way, and you can select the model from here. And you can add these options, like if you have like these are OpenAI concepts, like if you want a specific format as output or something, right? Like you can go with this functions option, and then a code interpreter. But here we are not going to do anything related to code. And this retrieval is what I've enabled here. So which introduced me this option of uploading files, right? So I've uploaded the same file in the Sitecore e-learning catalog here, and here is what I asked the same question here, and here you can see the same response, but in a different format, right? Because it's basically a different model, right? So which is trained on a like almost the same set of data, but it has like more additional data as well, because it's a recent model. So it has like it is trained like more additional information, which is up to April 2023. So it understands English better than the other model as well. So based on that, like based on whatever question I've asked, like it has provided me with the same response, and it includes those citations as well. So here it has broken that down into 5 chunks, right? So that's why you see those 5 icons here. Okay. And this is just a playground, right? So if you want to like create this in your application, you have to build your own chatbot, which integrates with all of these APIs, right? So these files APIs has to be integrated with Sitecore so that you can upload the content. And these threads API, these run API, all of these have to be integrated with your application chatbot. So you'll create your own chat window, but then you'll integrate this with OpenAI. Okay. And here you can see this. This is the assistant that I've created. And then here is the fine-tuning option, which I mentioned earlier, right? So that is also available if you want to create a custom model. And then API keys, files, usage settings. So that's pretty much it. And any questions, team, before I move on to the slides?
Feel free to unmute yourself if anyone has any questions. I think we can go on.
Okay. So here are some resources for you. So you could, so this is the chatbot module that I mentioned. Like if you are currently using XP and if you want to integrate with Azure OpenAI, you can use this GitHub application, use this SP application available in the GitHub. And so the Azure OpenAI is available in public preview mode, right? So if you want Azure OpenAI, if you want to play around it, like you have to like submit a request form, and it would typically get approved in a couple of days, right? And this still works for the production application as well, right? It's available in the public preview mode, but still you can do it in the production. But the other one, the OpenAI, is just in the beta mode, so it will take some time for it to mature, and then you can use it in your production application. And then I would say you have to wait till it gets integrated into Azure OpenAI, and then you can use the third approach. But right now, if you want to go with a better option for your XP application, you can go with the second option that I mentioned. And these are some trainings which you will find useful. Like I've summarized all of those in my slide, but it would be useful for you to go through all of these trainings in detail as well. So it covers the fundamentals. And here, as a developer, if you want to develop applications, this will be a good start for you. And there are some extensive trainings around semantic kernel, LangChain as well, right? So all of these are evolving, right? So you can go through all of those. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I know it may be a lot of details, but if you guys have any questions now or later, you could reach out to me